Do y'all remember the movie The Night Before from 1988? It starred Keanu Reeves, Lori Loughlin, and like a couple of other people. Um, I don't think a lot of people know about this movie, but I remember it, and it was so silly. It's one of those movies that kind of like bounces back and forth between events. Anyway, it starts off with Keanu Reeves. He like wakes up in this like sleazy alley. He has no memory of how he got there. He's trying to put the pieces together. So then it flashes back, and it kind of does this a few times. We find out that Lori Loughlin, who plays Tara, she asked him to prom, but it turns out that she only asked him because she lost a bet with her friend. And by the way, her best friend actually, she's in Killer Clowns from Outer Space. I can't remember her name, but she's the blonde chick from there. And she was also in a couple of Seinfeld episodes, and she was just in a bunch of stuff in the 80s, but then all of a sudden, she wasn't anywhere. But anyway, um, they they get ready to go to prom. Well, it turns out they end up on the wrong side of the tracks. They're in like a really bad neighborhood, and like he gets carjacked, and so he's missing his wallet. And also, it kind of flips back and forth to his interaction before taking her out to her dad, who's a cop. And so he's already super nervous about taking her out because her dad just kind of gave the whole dad talk, showed him his gun collection and all that stuff. So he's already super nervous, but he can't believe that he's going out with such a beautiful girl. And she's just like, oh. And his name is Winston, by the way. But she's just like, do you have any money, Winston? Because she had already planned on like calling a cab and everything. She knows this date's not going to go well. After the carjacking, they end up going to a club because it also flashbacks. It's kind of confusing at first. He's in a parking lot during like his current state. He has no memory. He sees his car that's abandoned in a parking lot, and he's just really trying to remember how it got there. And then he runs into this guy. I can't remember his name, but he ends up like breaking in with his car because he's just like, I'll help you get in your car because he couldn't find his keys. And so he gets in the car, starts it, then takes off. And then the whole movie is this guy driving around the city, like in that car. And Keanu Reeves is just like, hey, that's my car, but he never catches up with him. And so he finally gets his keys from the guy working at the parking lot. And also a name that's been uttered throughout this whole movie is a guy named Tito. And he's supposed to be like the big deal in the city, like someone to not mess with. And apparently at some point in the night that he has no memory of, he talks some shit about him in this club that he later traces his steps and ends up at. So back to him trying to trace his steps. He like ends up at that club, and then it flashes back to him and Tara at the club when it was busy, and he tells her like, hey, do you have I don't have any money or my wallet, do you have like a credit card, because then we could like give it to the bartender, we can like get the cash. And she's just like, oh, I don't like this idea, but whatever gets us out of here. So she goes up to the bartender, and he is played by oh my gosh, the guy who's the bully in Friday. Oh, I'm terrible with names today, but he's in this movie. He plays the bartender, and he's like real shady. And he's just like, do you take credit cards? And he's like, yeah. And he takes the credit card and he just pockets it. And so Keanu is just like, I think you misunderstood me. I was just wondering if you accept credit cards. And he's just like, no, we don't accept credit cards. And he doesn't give him his card back. He just asks him like, well, what do you want to drink? And so Keanu Reeves, he's like, ginger ale. And then he's like, and he's like, tequila. He ends up drugging this drink, because then he drinks it. Actually, yeah, before he downs this whole cup, there's another girl looking at him, and she's like, I wouldn't drink that if I was you. And he's like, well, you're not me. Downs the whole thing. And then all of a sudden, he's like, he's gone. So Lori Loughlin, she runs back into him wondering if he got the money. And she's just like, she can tell. Like, he just starts having like this goofy smile on his face, like he is out, you know? Then he starts breaking down on the dance floor, just having a good old time. Like he like just completely forgot what he was doing. And so, he asks her to dance, and so he's just twirling her around and everything, and they're just like, she has a moment of just like, okay, well, you know what? You know, can't beat him, join him, you know? So she's dancing with him, whatever. But then that quickly comes to an end because like something ends up happening. Oh yeah, that's when he gets up on stage because he like, in an altered state. That's when he starts because he's been hearing these murmurs about Tito, and so he gets up on stage in front of everybody at the club, and he just like, like talks shit about him, and so everybody's just like, oh shit. So word goes around, and then of course they still need money, right? So he ends up talking to some sleazy goons, and he's just like, hey, I really need money. Do you see that girl over there? And it shows Lori Loughlin, and she's just like, oh, let's get out of here, and the guys actually misinterpret this situation as her being a sex worker. And so they're saying like, yeah, we'll give you money. And then like, this is what's funny. Okay, that girl that warned him about the drink, she's trying to help him out, so she's with him talking to these dudes, negotiating a price. And so they're like 1,500, and this is coming from Tito, and he's just like, no, she is just like, 2,000, and then he's just like 1,900. And so they're just discussing numbers, and then Keanu Reeves is just like 1,700, and then the other guy's like 1,600, and he's like 1,500. Like the original number that the guys were saying, and he was just like, okay. And then there was this guy that was like eavesdropping, named Cue Ball, and he's like playing pool, and he like tells him like, you sold her too cheap. I would have paid half, or not half. I would have paid twice as much. Well, anyway, he shows up later, and so like they give him the cash, and he's like, whoa, money, and he still has no idea what's going on because he's still like drugged, and so they end up kidnapping Lori Loughlin, and like he blacks out completely. And so that's when it flashes forward to like current. He's just like, I gotta find her. I don't know what to do. So he ends up back at that club where he was earlier. And he tried, that girl is there. She's like the only one there. And so he's like, trying to get information. And she's just like, well, I mean, you sold her to Tito. And he's just like, what? He's finding out what he did because she's trying to like, help him out with like his memory. But then he's just like, well, I gotta, I need your help. I need to, get her back. And she's trying to like teach him some independence. Like, hey, back, in your side of the tracks, like everybody does some, everything for you. Well, over here, we gotta do our own thing or whatever. And so she's telling him to like ask around the town, try to find her yourself. And so that's what he does. He goes around town, and he's got actually ends up being 1,400. He goes around to like give cash to like people just around the town to like figure out information about what happened with her, where she went, who she was with. So because he was in a tuxedo, of course, because they were going to prom. So he ends up getting like a whole different outfit. He ends up also purchasing like a fake gun. And this guy in a truck's just been kind of driving him around because he was paying him. Finally, they stop at the place where he knows where she was last at. And he was just like, hey, can you wait here? And the guy's like, yeah, sure. And then as soon as he gets out of the car, he like speeds off. Because he knows it's like a shady neighborhood. And so he goes into this hotel, and it's like where there's like sex workers or whatever. And so he's been asking around people like, hey, I'm looking for the girl in the party dress, which is like her prom dress. It's like this pink lacy dress. Well, anyway, he ends up in one of the rooms, and he thinks he found her because there's this girl standing at the window with that same dress. Well, she turns around. It's not her, Lori Loughlin. And he was just like, oh, crap, like, you're not the girl I was looking for. And so she was telling him, well, like, someone sold her to this guy named Fat Jack, and they gave me this dress or whatever. So he, like, runs off to try to find this dude, Fat Jack. And then, of course, that's where he ends up finding Lori Loughlin. He busts in her room. She's just in underwear. And she's handcuffed to the bed. And he's just like, oh crap, we gotta get you out of here. Well, meanwhile, Fat Jack pulls up from the bottom of the hotel, and he's like out of breath, smoking, taking his sweet ass time going up these steps. Finally gets there, and before he enters in the room, Keanu Reeves, he was trying to like, cut her loose, but he couldn't, so he like hides in the bathroom. Fat Jack comes in, and he's like so gross. Oh my god. He was just like, hey, how would you like to make it with me? Mind you, that like, this is a teenager. I know they're adults playing teenagers, but it's like, picture, like, she's a minor. Like, so it's so gross, like, the idea of it. But, you don't think about that, when you're first watching that. But finally, he's confronted by Keanu Reeves, and, like, somehow he, like, busts open the door, but the door breaks and falls right on him, and then he falls through like multiple floors. He ends up falling in the room of that very lady that was at the bar, like helping him earlier. And so what a coincidence, so she goes up to the stairs, and she's like, she finds both of them, and she's like, oh good, you found her. So they're trying to get away, and they're fighting at the same time, though, like just bickering, and like he's calling her a brat, she's calling him all this stuff, and of course that girl's like, hey, wait a minute, you shouldn't be here, like you're like, Tito's gonna be here soon, and he's yeah, so like they're not paying attention, they're just bickering and walking all the way through. Anyway, they end up at the very like alley where Tito said he was going to meet him with his like gang and everything. Right at that same time, the guy that stole his car earlier, it was joyriding. I guess obviously everyone knows Tito. He pulls up at the same time, and he's like, hey Tito, I got a car for you. And he's like, oh wait, I know you. Of course you know him, you stole his car. Well, anyway, there's a lot of commotion going on, and Tito's trying to explain to him like, hey, this is serious, like, you're gonna give me my money or what, or give me her. And like, anyway, they try to break free because he whips out like the fake gun that he bought, and he told her to like aim it at them, anyway, she ends up like pulling in, it's like a lighter, and so they find out it's not real, so they're like loading up the car, and he and her are loading up them in their car, because she took like the bed frame with her, by the way. She was handcuffed, so she couldn't like get loose, so she rips the whole like iron bed, so she's been walking with it. They're loading it in the car, whatever. They on a speed chase, high speed chase, Finally, they make it away from Tito and everything. So of course they're going into the neighborhood. He's still scared about her dad, who's a cop, because earlier he tried to like call to the house, like, and pretend to be like someone else to see if she was like there. But the cop was just like, Winston, is this you? And so he hangs up. Well, anyway, they end up at her friend's house from earlier, because she was going to help him out by saying like, oh, I spent the night at my friend's house. So she calls the answering machine. Of course, answering machines in the 80s, she calls her dad's answering machine, pretending that she was at her friend's spending the night the whole time, so she could cover for Winston. And so that was a sweet moment that, like, she covered for him. Well, anyway, he said that he was going to come and pick her up. Well, she's still handcuffed to that bed frame, so he gets a saw. He's trying to, like, saw it off. The dad pulls up, and she's over at the front door, and her arm is still, like, out of view because he's still like sawing it off. So he literally cuts her loose at the last minute, And so he runs up from the back of the house, and I guess gets to his car from like down the street. So it looks like he's just pulling up. And so, like Lori Loughlin gets in the car with him. And so like her dad's just like, okay, well, I guess you're not so bad after all. And, you could take her home, but be safe. So, they speed off and that's the end of the movie. Such a crazy movie. Like, it's hard to explain it. I just wanted to share it with you to see if anyone else out there has ever seen this movie. It's a cool movie, if you could find it. Again, it's called The Night Before, Keanu Reeves, 1988. I highly recommend it because it's just one of those fun, goofy movies. It's kind of got like a back and forth, like, flashback type of movie. So if you're in the mood for something silly. I would recommend it.